Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, I'm excited to talk about smoking meat barbecue. Is it healthy? We're gonna get into this. And what I'm referring to here are meats like pulled pork, ribs, brisket, bacon, and other smoked meats, what we consider barbecue in the States. And I want to take a deep dive into this topic to help dissolve the myths and misconceptions that smoked meats cause cancer and other health issues. First, absolutely, these foods can be a source of carcinogens. Yes, they in fact can, if they're cooked in modern conventional ways, or if the fuel source that's used to cook these meats is treated with chemicals. Sure, you're going to set yourself up for exposure to some nice carcinogens when you cook over fire, when you smoke meats in this way. However, these foods can absolutely be a healthy part of anyone's diet when the animals are raised, processed, and cooked in natural ways. And when you use natural sources, natural fuel sources to cook these foods. So, smoking meat, if we kind of look back at the history of this and our ancient ancestors and our ancient ancestors, smoking meat was actually the first cooking method that humans sought out because it was their only option. Yeah, right. They couldn't switch on the gas range, they couldn't switch on the electric, etc. And research on smoking meat and when this started dates back to caveman times. So I'd say we've been doing it for just a little while. And, we've humans have cooked over fire and smoke for far longer than we've been cooking on a stovetop. So this way of cooking is in our blood, it's in our DNA, it's in our biology. Um, and but we've gone away from this for convenience reasons, of course. And however, I want to bring this way of cooking, help to inspire you to cook over fire more, for many reasons. Um, but I'm going to get into that during this episode. Now, I'm also going to talk about why you should cook with a propane or gas stove over electric, towards the end of this episode as well. But it wasn't until about 150 years ago that the gas range stove came into use and came into common use, more and more people using it. And until then, every household had a fireplace for cooking. And that fire was going pretty much 24/7. You didn't want to let that fire go out. And the job of manning or womaning this fire was one of the most important roles one could play in the family home, in the household. It was a really important role. Without a fire, no one would eat, right? So also without fire, food doesn't taste as good, nor is it as nutritious in some cases. And certain cooked foods allows for better energy production in the mitochondria and better absorption and assimilation rates in the gut. So it turns out cooking with fire was a biological survival tactic. It's been replaced by the gas and electric stove, but we're going to get back in touch with our with cooking with fire during this episode. Now, there are many people still today cooking with fire, okay? And there are also many people out there today who don't have access to a gas range, who don't have access to electricity, and who still rely on fire as their main sole cooking method. For those of us who have access to a gas range, many of us still cook over fire. And with our barbecue pits and grilling and so forth. And we've come to call this way of cooking, at least in the States, barbecue. Now, yes, we can get technical between smoking, barbecue, grilling, etc. But I'm going to keep things simple for the sake of this episode and introducing this topic. Now, there's one reason why people still use fire and smoke to cook meat and other foods today, even those of us who own a gas range, who own an electric store, etc. And that's because food cooked with fire tastes freaking delicious. Hands down, if you've had food cooked over fire, like, Whoa, what is that? It's fire, right? During this episode, I'll be talking about cooking over fire, barbecuing, and how you can do so in a way that connects you with nature, that enhances your Sunlight RX practice, that supports your health, and how to use fire and smoke to improve the taste of your food. Now, before I dive into today's episode, I want to share with you all that enrollment in my ancestral health certification course is now open, and it's going to remain open until February 23rd, 2024. Now, the bare bone essence of this course teaches you how to be the health practitioner that I wish I had when I was in the throes of my healing crisis, honestly. And I specifically teach you how to create customized ancestral health programs for your clients using sunlight and food in a therapeutic context. The course focuses on how to address specific diseases such as type 2 diabetes, cancer, Hashimoto's, metabolic syndrome, osteoporosis, and more using a 100% natural approach. You can learn more about the program by heading over to my site, heatharshepard.com, and you can click on the tab that reads Ancestral Health Certification to learn more. If you read through the course content and you're like, yes, sign me up, send a message my way, DM me on Instagram, sunlight_RX, send me an email, or the easiest way is really quite likely to fill out the contact page on my site, and I will be in touch and we can set up a time to chat about the course. All right, everyone, let's deep dive into cooking with fire and smoke. First, I also want to let you know that I just wrote a blog on how to smoke pork shoulder. And you can check out the blog and get my tips and recipe for smoking a pork shoulder on my Eat Heal Farm blog located over on my site, heatharshepard.com. The blog provides you with resources such as optimal temperatures to cook your meat at, how to choose a Bluetooth-free smoker, what kind of charcoal to use that's free of additives, and of course, I give you my recipe for hickory smoked pulled pork. And again, you can find that over on my Eat Heal Farm blog. Let's start this episode off by dissolving myths around smoked meat and cooking with fire being a health hazard. All right, let's just put this baby to bed. And people are like, do you eat smoked meat? It's like, no, it's a carcinogen. Okay, let's slow this down. Now, sure, you can create a nice chunk of carcinogenic meat if you use treated charcoal, or if you're, excuse my French, but if you're too lazy to make a fire and douse the charcoal in lighter fluid, sure, you're gonna have a nice piece of carcinogen-laden meat. If you don't know how to make a fire for cooking or keeping your house warm, I'm sure many people don't have a fireplace. I'm obsessed with them. I love them. But, I would encourage you to learn this skill. It's an essential life skill that can honestly be a lifesaver. Not only that, it can be fun. It can bring you back into your primal roots. Something happens when we learn how to work with fire. But bottom line, you can avoid the negative health effects of barbecue and grilled meats by using some common sense when making these foods. Okay, so what's required? Well, a 100% natural hardwood charcoal and no lighter fluid, zero, zip. Okay, right? Not only that, lighter fluid leaves your meat tasting like chemicals. It's like, oh my God, if you're out hiking and you're at like a park or something, you can smell that lighter when somebody's just doused their charcoal and lighter fluid to start grilling their hot dogs or hamburgers. It's like you can smell it. It like takes your breath away. It's disgusting because it's extremely toxic. Say no to lighter fluid. Learn how to make a fire. Okay. Then you can enjoy the flavor, the health benefits, and the nourishment that these forms of cooking with smoke, real smoke, cooking with fire, etc., provide and have provided humans for millions and millions of years. The real question is, why didn't cavemen get cancer from eating smoked meat? They didn't have lighter fluid and they didn't use chemicals, period. Okay, so now this is a good time to talk about charcoal because I cook with charcoal, and as soon as you say charcoal to anybody in the health world, they're like, carcinogen, whoa, judgment, okay? Charcoal, let's have a chat about it. It's a block of carbon, okay? The wood has been burned down and develops a black color, and this is a result of the water being basically burnt out of the wood, leaving you with charcoal, okay? So you just have charcoal. It's wood that's burned down, the water evaporates, and now you're left with charcoal. Okay, this is what charcoal is. You can do all sorts of nonsense to that charcoal to mess it up. But if you have a nice piece of hickory wood, you burn it down, what you're left with is charcoal chunks or pieces. There is nothing wrong with that. There are no negative health implications for cooking with that substance. Now, do you have to cook with charcoal? No, I mean, you don't. You honestly don't. If you're a little skeptical, if you're like, Heather, you sold me with the statins, okay, work on my cholesterol, try to raise it, don't listen to them, but you can't get on board with the charcoal yet, that's okay. Take your time. Everyone has their own timing, right? You don't have to cook with charcoal. However, using charcoal at least initially to start your fire, before you add your wood to the fire, if you're going to cook with wood also, is a great way to get your fire nice and hot, not too hot, but hot enough to cook your food. And starting your fire with charcoal also improves the longevity of your fire and increases the heat, a healthy amount of heat that your fire produces. But if you want to skip this step, if you're still thinking about it, you could. But it's going to take your fire longer to get hot enough to cook on. And bottom line, there's nothing wrong with untreated charcoal. Now, right? Because don't forget, I really want to help you understand this. Took me a while as well. I was like, wait, really? Wait, charcoal, not all charcoal is the same. Charcoal isn't bad unless it's treated. If you go to your grocery store in the States, we have this brand called Kingsford or King something. Horrible, horrific. Leave it there. Okay. Most charcoals are treated, and just like everything else with your health and making food choices, you have to put in some extra effort to choose an untreated charcoal. It's worth it. Seek it out. Please do it. It's well worth your while. So opt for untreated charcoal harvested from real wood where the wood hasn't been treated. Okay. Now, if you choose to smoke your meat, you're going to need a hardwood like oak, like post oak, like scrubby oak, like hickory, maybe even pecan. My favorite for pork and beef is hickory wood, and smoking meat, excuse me, please don't smoke wheat. Smoking meat with softer wood like juniper, like pinyon, like aspen. No, don't do this. This is this is going to create a residue, a resin on your meat and it's going to be released during the cooking process. That's going to leave your meat tasting funky. Don't do it. Okay. You want to use a hardwood when smoking meat. And I honestly use hardwood when I'm cooking over fire as well. When I'm not smoking, if I'm just cooking over fire, I'll use a fruit wood or a hardwood. And these are really great for smoking or for cooking over fire. Now, when it comes to choosing a natural hardwood charcoal for smoking or grilling, I highly recommend avoiding briquettes. These are almost always treated with nitrates, limestone, borax, coal. The wood has been treated. Petroleum products have been added. Starch has been added, right? And it's like, you do not want those substances in your food. And if you're cooking with charcoal that contains those substances, 1,000,000% they're going to end up in your food and they're going to be harmful to your health. And this is how cooking over charcoal, smoke, barbecuing gets a bad rap. Now, Of course, briquettes are more convenient, and anybody can line their grill with briquettes and just pour, light them on fire, pour a little lighter fluid, because they have all of these flammable agents in them that allow the charcoal to catch fire more easily. Um, More easier than lump charcoal, for example, because of the fillers and chemicals that are added to them. And so just know, if you see a briquette, leave it there. They're like, oh, get some charcoal, get some briquettes. Don't get the briquettes. Most of them are no bueno. Now, I cannot recommend enough to source the wood for your smoker or for your fire that you're cooking your food over locally, or at least in within your country. Now, there are many reasons for this, including deforestation, protecting your local ecosystem, and hopefully, the wood is sourced from trees that are dead. And by cutting them down and putting them to different use, say for your wood that you're going to be cooking your food with, well, hopefully this will decrease the risk of wildfires in your area. The increase in wildfires is excessive, and in my opinion, is largely due to the increase in satellites and cell towers that have just exploded over the past decade. And that's a different topic for a different day. But when I smoke meats, I like to use an offset smoker for many reasons. Unlike a pellet smoker, using real wood offers a deep, more rich, and in my opinion, a more flavorful end product. So your meat is going to have more flavor. It's going to take on more of that the hickory wood flavor, or whatever wood you're using. And I really like that. I like a smoky meat. That's why I smoke the meat, because I like the flavor. It's rich, it's deep, it's moist, right? Now, not only that, I got a bonus here. But when I set the day up to be like, today's smoker day, because you have to plan. You're not going to be like 5 minutes unless you're grilling a few chicken thighs. Even then, you can be out there for 30 minutes to an hour, which is awesome. But when I'm smoking something like a pork shoulder, this is going to be 3 to 6 to 8 hour process outside on my offset smoker. And so this is a bonus, because you get to be outside for hours at a time. And if you're using some sort of hardwood, you can split the hardwood. You don't have to be like a lumberjack. You can use a hatchet to do so. In many cases, the wood doesn't have to be that big, so try not to get intimidated. But it's a really great way to set out a chunk of time to get a really healing effect of the sun. And I will honestly look at the weather and I'll be like, boom, Wednesday's the day, full sun, and it's going to be smoker day, because then I get to smoke my meat. I get to get my Sunlight RX on. I get to give myself a bigger dose of healing on these days. I always plan to smoke meat on a sunny day, so I can get the additional healing benefits of sunlight. That's like a little added like plug there. It's just personally what I do, because most of us spend far too much time indoors, and of course technology has heaps to do with this issue, right? But let's look at some other things, because we blame technology, and we should. We that's it is a big blame, right? But let's look at another layer here, because there are several layers here. We've lost touch with the primal elements that nature provides, like what? Like, just living more of an outside life, living more of an outdoor life. Like, start a compost heap. Learn to split wood. If you're coordinated, I tried to teach my friend the other day how to split wood. She gave it one swing and I was like, not your thing. No problem. you know, know your strengths. But find something that speaks to you, right? These are just some examples, right? Collect wood for your wood stove or fireplace. Collect rainwater to water your garden, or to water the plants around your property. And learn to cook over fire. These are some ways that you can not only be outside more, but actually be involved in nature. Get back in touch with your roots, right? Now, these are all added bonuses. And I feel like just being outside and on my offset smoker, something happens in my brain. It's like a different rewiring happens. It's like I'm in my primal element. I'm doing this thing that, you know, humans have done for millions of years. I feel very much in touch with myself and with the world and nature and so forth. And so, you know, um and it's important to me to keep the ancient tradition and skill of cooking with fire alive and well. That's something that's really important to me. We all have our passions. That's one of mine. Now, not to mention I love cooking over fire because it tastes incredible. These are a few reasons I prefer cooking with an offset smoker. And will you have to tend the fire more than say a pellet grill or a pellet smoker? Yeah, absolutely. Will you have to know a few skills regarding splitting wood, even with a hatchet? Yeah, you are. In most cases, unless you use wood chips, which you can if they're untreated. Will you have to know how to read a fire? To tell, hey, when do I add more wood? Does it need more oxygen? Do I need to play with the damper a little bit? So yeah, you'll have to know these things. And honestly, these are skills that are easy to learn. I'm trying to keep them alive. And it's definitely not as hard as it may sound when I'm describing it here. If you've always wanted to cook with fire, but you're like, I don't know anything about a fire, you can do it. You totally can do it. Start simple. Now I want to mention a few things about a Traeger or and other pellet grills. Really, first, I'm not opposed to this form of smoking or cooking. In fact, I smoke my bacon on a Traeger because bacon needs a very low temperature, around 145 Fahrenheit to smoke. And to smoke at to cure it. And the Traeger is really good for this. You can kind of pinpoint your temperature more accurately, especially in a lower range with something like a pellet. But I cannot recommend enough that if you are thinking about getting some sort of pellet grill stove smoker, to get a non-Bluetooth version. I mean, who in the F wants Bluetooth wireless radiation on their food, honestly? We don't think about these things. It's like, here's Traeger with the newest thing, and you can like hardwire your iPhone up to this so you can watch the game and not worry about your fire. I mean, come on, right? Like, just no to radiation on your food. This will also create carcinogens in your barbecue, so we have to factor this in as well. Now, I've actually contacted Traeger to ask what models they offer that are free of that are not wireless. Okay. And they actually have a couple models. They have the Pro Series 22 and the Pro Series 34. Those are your options to avoid Bluetooth. If you're like, Heather, I'm not ready to go all in with making a fire yet, start with this and get one of those models to avoid Bluetooth, wireless, Wi-Fi exposure. Okay, while we're on pellet grills, let me just mention, there are currently no models of the green egg that are free of wireless technology. Leave them on the shelf. Big pass on that one. Okay. Also, there's one other thing I want to mention about the pellet. Wood pellets can sometimes be treated, the pellets that you actually use to smoke or grill the food. Okay, they can be treated with shit, with chemicals, methyl bromide, binders, glues. Inquire. Do a hard inquire about that bag of pellets that you're about to pick up to go make some. If you just buy a grass-fed ribeye, a tomahawk, and you want to put it on the pellet, and that the pellets have binders, glues, and chemicals in them. Oh man, like come on. That's just like totally negated this amazing piece of meat here that I have that was going to nourish me. So really look into that. Do your research before just picking up a bag of pellets and going home and using them on your pellet grill smoker, right? Make sure you get wood pellets that are 100% natural and haven't been treated with anything. Okay. Now, if you want to be sure, you can try this. I often do. Okay, ring, ring, ring. You call up or you do your chat thing on online with the customer service rep, right? And you're like, hey, I need to know if your wood pellets are treated with anything because I have a debilitating chronic autoimmune condition, and I can't have any chemicals. I can't be near them, I can't eat them, and I really need to be sure about this. Whether you have a chronic disease like this or not, use this, and usually you'll get a straight answer. Usually, okay? So, all right, now when I barbecue, aka smoke on my offset smoker or cook over fire, I never use any of the crap ingredients that modern day barbecue often involves. We think of like barbecue, Tennessee, Texas, deep south, right? But what often goes with this? Well, what often goes with this is Wonder Bread, GMO barbecue sauce, corn syrup solids in your barbecue sauce, GMO sugar, caking agents that are added to the spices. I love barbecue, but man, this is how you ruin a really good piece of meat that takes hours to cook. Why go through all that and then have something that's just going to totally F with your health? I mean, I never barbecue in this way because it's obviously not a health supportive practice. And who knows? When they test, hey, does barbecue cause cancer, right? Because it's what it's blamed on the most. It's like, well, we've just taken it out of context. Does barbecuing like a complete idiot cause cancer? Probably. Yes. Does barbecuing like the cavemen did millions of years ago cause cancer? I'm going to say really, really unlikely. Absolutely not. There's no evidence that shows or proves this. History has not shown this. Let's talk about your spice rub for a minute. I make my own spice rub so I can control the ingredients that go into it, right? I want to avoid the caking agents. I want to avoid the chemicals. I want to avoid the natural seasonings, natural spices. What the F is that? It could be literally a million things and they can all contain GMOs or MSG. So no, I'm going to make my own all organic spice blend using real sea salt and often dried herbs or spices that I've grown in my garden or someone in my community has grown or someone amazing has grown somewhere in the world in a really good way. And also I make my own barbecue sauce for the same reason. Now, it's easy to make your own barbecue sauce, and then there's no additives, there's no corn syrup, there's not heaps of sugar, and these are ways you can eat, enjoy, make barbecue in a way that doesn't destroy your health. Let me just state the obvious. If you're having a hard time getting your kids or family to eat meat, throw some pork on the pit or grilled chicken, and your kids will be housing animal protein like you've never seen. I guarantee it. Make them like a really good honey mustard using honey, raw honey, and mustard, and they literally will down it. Um, okay. Now, I want to circle back to sunlight. Most of us need more sunlight than, let's just say, we can shake a stick at. And carving out at least one sunny day per week to cook food over fire outside is a great way to increase your sunlight exposure for a longer duration of time than you likely typically get. Place your grill or smoker in the sun. And also, the sun will naturally heat up your grill and it'll reduce the amount of wood you'll be using during cooking, because the sunlight will help keep your grill nice and warm. And expose as much skin as your neighborhood allows, as you're able to safely do. Take this time to do things outside, to read, to stretch, to chop wood, or to connect with nature in ways that you may not do on a regular basis. It can be really a really good way to get back into your primalness. I know this is kind of a theme here today, but I really want to emphasize it because there's so much more to this than just being out there and manning a fire. It's like you're in the elements. It's that kind of sounded new agey. You're in the elements, but you're in nature, right? Now, you know, sunlight, I know I talk about it all the time, but one thing we know for sure, the more sunlight one is exposed to throughout their lifetime, the longer they live and the less susceptible they are to chronic disease. So why not kill two metabolic plus hormone supportive birds with one stone and barbecue your ancestral meat and bioavailable protein while soaking up the sun? Okay. Now, um, if you need some tips as to how to get started with how to use the sun therapeutically, including how to prevent sunburn, how to improve your metabolic flexibility using sunlight, you can head over to my site and pick up a copy of the Sunlight RX ebook. You'll find it right at the header of my site. If your health doesn't improve after committing to this practice, as I lay out in the protocol for 2 to 3 months, I'll refund your purchase. No problem. 100%. That's how much I believe and have experienced, not only in myself and family members, but my clients over the past 15 years using sunlight as a therapeutic modality. Okay, let's discuss electric stoves versus a gas range. Okay, first, electric stoves will naturally emit more EMFs because, well, they need an electrical source to produce their heat and they need a pretty strong one. There are many reasons why I hate electric stoves: EMFs, difficulty in managing cooking temperatures, they take longer to heat up than gas stoves, they use electricity to cook your food versus a flame, fire. They take way too long to adjust to different temperatures. They're hard to cook on. And maybe it's just me, but I don't think food tastes as good on an electric stove, period. Okay? When it comes to a gas range, you have two options, and I want you to be aware of these options. You have natural gas and you have propane. Okay. My ideal choice is propane at this point in time. I'm not a fan of natural gas for so many reasons. I mean, umpteen reasons, so many environmental reasons, destroying communities to get to natural gas, right? We don't even have to do that. This is how the government can keep you controlled because um, if your stove is fueled by natural gas, guess what? You still need an electrical source to access this fuel. They control your fuel source. I'm not, that's not something I want to sign up for. So, when the electric goes out, or maybe I'm not a full on conspiracy theorist, but let's be real here. Maybe if the grid goes down, how are you going to eat? How are these people in cities who only have access to electric stoves and some natural gas, which they still control and are maintained by electric, how are they going to eat? Right? How are they going to eat if any of this stuff ever happens? If, now real conspiracy theorists would be like, it's not if, Heather, it's when. It's not if, it's when, right? I'm going with if. So, um, propane does not require an electric current, an electric outlet to utilize this fuel. Okay. Um, Now they don't like that. The government's trying to get us, they're trying to put this crap in our brains. They just started advertising a year or two ago saying that propane isn't good to cook with. Everyone should switch to electric stoves, right? And can you imagine like the chefs in the restaurants? No, these things couldn't exist without gas ranges. You can't cook food on an electric stove. For anybody who has an electric stove, all right, I get it. I know you can actually cook food on it, but you know, I'm just putting this bug in your ear. I'm just putting a little bug out there that maybe it's worth considering, if you have an electric stove, to maybe spend a day or two cooking outside on fire just to offset it, less EMFs. 2 days a year, I mean 2 days a week, add that up to a year. That's how much less EMFs than an electric stove, provides. Just saying. Okay. So we've dissolved myths around smoking meat being a carcinogen, and I've taught you how to prevent this. We've talked about how to choose the best wood pellets and wood for your barbecue purposes. We've talked about making your own spice rub and barbecue sauce. We've discussed the importance of Bluetooth-free smokers and Traegers. Oh, please, please, please avoid that. Let's end today's episode by talking about the health benefits of animal protein, one of my favorite topics, which include in that category smoked meat and meat cooked over fire. First, I know you all know this, but okay, let's just say you always want to source your meat from grass fed sources, non jabbed. Ideally, it's not enough if they say they haven't used mRNA. Everybody's up in sorts about mRNA, and we should be, but you need to hear them say no jabs ever, period. Period. None. Okay. Now, you want to source your fish from wild caught sources. No organically or sustainably farmed fish doesn't count. It's BS. These are marketing tactics to get you to buy their food, their product. Farm raised fish are not ideal. It's not ideal for your health. It's not ideal for anything, for the environment, for the fish. They aren't born and raised in an environment that their biology requires. Another hard pass. So these forms of protein, though grass-fed and wild-caught, are rich in bioavailable nutrients that are optimal for what? For bone health, for metabolic health, for hormone health, for heart health, for energy production, for mitochondrial health. If you choose to smoke meat, say something like a pork shoulder, maybe a picnic roast, maybe a brisket, these foods also have a lot longer shelf life because the smoke actually holds the nutrients intact for a longer period of time. This is another reason why our ancient ancestors smoked meats, because it could last them throughout the winter without spoiling. And it holds the nutrients intact by doing so, by using this method. What this means is that even if you live solo, you're like, Heather, why would I smoke something? I live by myself, and then I got this huge piece of meat. I mean, that's a good problem to have. You know what I'm saying? But even if you live solo, smoke yourself a brisket and enjoy it throughout the week without worrying if it'll go off, because it won't. Now I have no idea if there's scientific backing to this one, but I'm going to use some common sense here, right? So, eating smoked foods, and this is my personal experience as well, stimulates our primalness. It stimulates our primal senses. It gets us outside. It stimulates this feeling of satisfaction that comes along with deliciously nourished foods that you make. When you get that brisket on the smoker and it comes out and it's like so tender, you're like, "Oh my gosh, I created that using nature while outside. My family's nourished." Just me, but I'm like, "Yes, that's amazing. Oh, that's so awesome. That's a good feeling." So, go get yourself a barbecue pit, get yourself an offset smoker. I've tried so many versions. I know which ones are crap. Most of them are. But if you're like, "Hey, I really am considering this," you send a message my way and I'm happy to talk about this subject. Maybe I'll do a blog on it in the future, because the smoker really matters. Okay, it makes your meat smoking experience really impactful. Like, it makes it harder, easier, or somewhere in the middle, depending on the quality of the smoker. So happy to give options there if need be. And get into your primal senses while supporting your health with bioavailable protein that nourishes you, your family, and you're getting your sunlight RX on, all while you cook food like your ancient ancestors did, over fire. This podcast is not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any disease or condition, and is not intended as medical advice. The Primal Pioneer podcast is to be used for informational and educational purposes only.